Guys, so I'm here with my top 10 books of 2016. I didn't read as much as I have done previous years with my Goodreads reading challenge. I managed to read 66 books this year, which is still met my target. I set myself quite a low target because for my reading goals in 2016, I said that I wanted to just read more of what I fancied, whether that be bigger books or different genres, classics, etc. And I didn't want that to affect like a reading goal. I didn't want like the amount of books that I read to be constantly on my mind, and I think I achieved that. I didn't care so much about how many books that I read, and that's definitely something that I want to carry on like moving forward, is not so much think about the quantity of books that I'm reading. I definitely, when I looked through what I'd read, I definitely enjoyed more books than I disliked. So yeah, I've written down basically my top 10 books, and then I'm hopefully going to insert the covers afterwards, because in all honesty I couldn't be bothered to pull all the books off my shelf. So these aren't going to be in any particular order, you know, of favourites. They're just, you know, the top 10. It's far too hard to put them in like an actual order of favourites, because picking the 10's hard enough as it is. So the first one would definitely be The Problem with Forever by Jennifer L. Armentrout. And I read this book sort of towards the end of the year. I read it, I think in October. It was definitely after my holiday. And I don't know what took me so long to like pick this book up. I wish I'd picked it up sooner. I absolutely loved it. It's a YA novel by her. And it definitely reminded me of Pushing the Limits by Katie McGarry. It was absolutely beautiful. I loved it from the moment I started reading. It's about a girl called Mallory, and I cannot remember the life of me the guy's name. But they were sort of in the same foster home when they were younger, and then a sort of tragedy happens and they get split up, and then they're reunited sort of in high school. And I just found it absolutely beautiful, and I just absolutely loved it. So if you haven't read that one, obviously I'm going to recommend all 10 of these books. So moving on, I have to also recommend Empire of Storms by Sarah J. Maas. Hands down one of my favourite books of the year. This is one that I read in September. I took this book on holiday with me. This series just never fails to deliver. It's amazing. With each book I'm worried that it's not going to be as good as the previous book, and every time I shouldn't worry, because Sarah J. Maas just delivers. This is the 5th book in the Throne of Glass series and the penultimate book, so the next book is the final book. And this book had such an evil sort of ending. The way it ends, the wait for the next book is just awful. But with each book, like the action and the suspense, everything is just ramped up, and I absolutely loved it. It was fantastic. I loved it from beginning to end. So much stuff going on, so much more character development. It's just absolutely fantastic, and obviously the next book is one of my most anticipated books for 2017. So next book on my list is An Author's Odyssey, The Land of Stories, Book 5 by Chris Colfer. This is a middle grade series that I talk about a lot on my channel. I just absolutely love it. The Land of Stories is just one of those series that is just so fun to read, and the whole fairy tale world is just so fun. What I loved about this book is that Connor, one of the twins, writes his own stories, and in this he actually travels with sort of one of his grandmother's potions into his own stories to recruit his own characters to fight against the literary army. And it's just so fun. Again, with the way this one ended, it's set up for the next book, and I'm just eagerly anticipating book 6. It's just such a fun storyline that obviously is meant for younger readers, but actually a lot of the writing and a lot of the humour is something that older readers can enjoy as well. I think it's just a great across the board series, and I absolutely love it. and if you haven't started that series, I don't know what you're thinking of, because it's absolutely amazing. So the next book on my list is Deep Redemption by Tilly Cole. And this is the fourth book in the Hades Hangmen series. As you guys know, I absolutely love Tilly Cole. I've read loads of her books now, and I think my favourite series of hers is still the Hades Hangmen series. It's the first series of hers that I started, and I think it will always be my favourite. It's a very dark series. A lot of stuff happens. There's a lot of stuff in there that's quite hard to read, quite hard topics. I mean, the whole series is set around a motorcycle club and also a sadistic cult. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of violence, sex, abuse that can be quite hard to read. But at the same time, she just puts in these amazing characters that you just absolutely fall in love with and you root for. It's an amazing series, and she's just an absolutely amazing writer. And this is the fourth book, and I worried with this book because it's about a character that in the previous books has been sort of portrayed as, the enemy, and he's basically a traitor. He betrayed them. And it's his story and about who he falls in love with. And there were some really nice surprises thrown in there, some twists and some turns that I didn't see coming, which was really, really nice, a big surprise. And again, it's really weird to say that you like reading something so dark, but at the same time, she does it in such a way that you just can't stop reading. And she absolutely delivered on this novel. I'm so happy with it. I actually recommended the Hades Hangmen series to my manager at work, and she's absolutely in love with them as well. She's caught up with the series. She loves reading, but she doesn't read a lot. But this series is one that she's kept up to date with and is absolutely in love with, and we talk about it loads. Absolutely love this series, and this one, hands down, that I just devoured it. I didn't want to do anything else but read this book. Next book on my list was a surprise for me, and that's Hope and Red by John Scovron. And this was a book that showed up completely unsolicited for review, and the moment it arrived, the cover really drew me in, and I can't really put my finger on what it is about it, but I just loved the cover so much. And it was quite a chunky book. It's a fantasy novel, so I think it was about 500 pages, thereabouts, if not more. And sort of it arrived, and I was reading something else at the time, and as soon as I finished that, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to dive straight into this novel. And even though it's sort of a fantasy read, I got straight into it, and I think I read it quite quickly. I think maybe considering with work and other things as well, I think I read it in about a week, which for such a chunky novel is quite a feat for me. And from the moment I started reading it, I was hooked in this world. I loved the sort of alternating character perspectives. I loved the writing style. Everything about it was just fantastic, and I just devoured it. And the moment that I finished it, I was like, I cannot wait for the next book. And I think it comes out in February 2017. So as soon as that comes out, I think I'm going to read it, because I just absolutely loved it. It's not one I've heard an awful lot about either, but I pimp it out every chance I get because I absolutely loved it and I can't recommend it enough. So the next book on my list will probably be no surprise to anybody, and that's Marked in Flesh by Anne Bishop. This is I want to say the fourth novel in the Others series, which is just, we all know it's like my favourite series. I just can't get enough of this series. I don't want to say too much about it again, because if you haven't read the first book or anything, then it will mean nothing to you. But honest to goodness, I just love this series. I love as well that it was basically about shapeshifters kind of, and blood prophets, and lots of just interesting different characters, and it's a completely different kind of fantasy novel, and I love throughout the series, I have rooted for a romantic relationship between the main character Meg and sort of one of the other main characters, which is Simon. And you can see something there, but it sort of developed into this amazing friendship. And each book I'm like, I want romance, and we're getting there book by book. We're like getting there. Normally, you guys know I love a romance in my novels, and I just love romance. Not everybody does, that's fine, but I love me a good romance, and I'm just waiting and waiting for it. But even though I haven't got that yet, I still love the books. Like it's just an amazing series, and it needs to be read by everyone, in my opinion. So the next book on my list is 1,000 Boy Kisses by Tilly Cole. She gets 2 books on my top 10. This is sort of a YA new adultish novel, and oh my god guys, this novel just made me bawl my eyes out. I honest to god, it made my heart clench, and I'm not exaggerating. It was such a heart-wrenching novel. I'm tearing up now just thinking about it. And I wasn't sure, because I'd heard mixed things. I'd heard people loved it. I'd heard people that were slightly disappointed by it. So I was quite nervous. I don't know why I was, because it's Tilly Cole and I love my Tilly Cole. But I think I read 4 or 5 books of hers this year, actually. I could have easily put them all on there. But it's basically about obviously a boy and a girl. They meet when they're really young. They become next door neighbours. They become best friends. And as they grow up, they become boyfriend and girlfriend, you know, their childhood sweethearts. And then Rune, the boy, his family take him back to Iceland, and Poppy stops contacting him. So when he moves back to America, he's all sort of angsty and angry. But then he finds out the reason why she stopped contacting him, and it's heartbreaking. And it's just, but it's sort of a happily ever after, but not a happily ever after. You have to read it to find out. But I was just like, oh my god, this is just too much. At one point I thought, I can't carry on reading this. This is just too much. But yeah, she's just an amazing writer. Like I said before, she really hits you in the feels. The next book on my list is Winter by Marissa Meyer. And I'm not going to lie, part of the reason this is on my list is purely because I managed to finish this massive book and a series. Quite proud. I was nervous obviously picking this up because this is the concluding part in the series. I haven't read the sort of short story anthology thing either, which I do need to read, but I was just so happy to, you know, finish the series. And I thought it was a good end to the series. I don't know how, but I felt like it maybe could have had a little bit more. It was quite a hard book to read in that you had so many characters meeting up, splitting up, going off into different groups, meeting up, splitting up again. Like, you had to concentrate to read it. You couldn't just sort of pick it up and casually read. You had to, you know, concentrate to read it. But I thought it was a satisfying conclusion. I was happy with the way it ended. And yeah, it was a series that I really, really loved. I loved that we had like a sci-fi fairy tale retelling, and you know, each book we saw more characters, and I just loved it. Winter, the actual character, I thought she was absolutely crazy. But yeah, I really loved this series, and I'm glad that I read it, and I'm looking forward to reading more by Marissa Meyer as well. So the next book on my list is The Girl You Left Behind by J.J. Myers. As we know, Me Before You, one of my all-time favourite books. I read it, really affected me. I thought it was a fantastic book. So I've been looking to get into and read more, obviously, of J.J. Myers' books. And The Girl You Left Behind was fantastic. I loved it. It was a book with sort of 2 timeline stories. One that was, is it World War I or World War II? I want to say World War II. And then in the present, this woman has this painting of a woman, and the storylines are connected, and it was a fantastic read. If you like historical fiction, you'd like it. I mean, if you like contemporary fiction, you'll like it. It's a nice mix of the two. There is some romance in there, but it's not heavy on that. I mean, this woman lost her husband in like a freak accident, so she's still sort of grieving him, trying to make ends meet and stuff like that. But you know, she doesn't want to get rid of this painting because it was a gift from him, but you have people trying to claim that it's, you know, Nazi looted art and that it needs to go back to its rightful owner. Lots of interesting stuff going on in this book, and J.J. Moyes' writing is always a pleasure. Like, it's just, it has to be read. It's amazing. So that's one I definitely recommend picking up. And then the last book that is on my top 10 is a Regency romance. You guys know I read my fair share of Regency romance, but one of my favourites is the Oxenberg Princes by Karen Hawkins. And the third book, Mad for the Plaid, was released. Cover, if I can find it. And it's just a series that's really light, fluffy, fun, and sometimes you just want a book that you can just dive into, really love, and not think too much about. And that's like sort of the kind of book and the kind of series that was for me. Just really enjoyable, really fun, and a cracking good romance, which we know I love to obsess over. So that's my top 10 books for 2016, guys. If any of these books made your list, I would love to know in the comments down below. Also, let me know what books were on your list. What was your favourite book? Did you have a book that you particularly hated even? I always love to know, so let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you all soon. Happy reading, guys.